Hey everyone, Healthy Dad here, and today I'm excited to show you how to make ancient grain sourdough crackers. They are part of my life-changing food series because these happen to be one of those staple items that you can make at home with beneficial, nutritious ingredients that will change the lives and health of you and your family members. Now, there are just a few simple steps to making this recipe, so come check out the video, let me know if you have any questions, and let's get right to it. So we're going to get started with our ancient grain sourdough cheese crackers. So the night before we want to make our crackers, we're going to prep the dough. We'll start with a couple cups of einkorn in this case, or whatever ancient grain that you like. Grind it however you can. I'll use my VitaMix Blender. I use a special canister just for dry items. Now we have a cup of active sourdough starter and about 3/4 cups of water that we'll add. And give that a nice whisk. Get that yeast activated, and we'll add all of the flour that we just ground. Using freshly ground flour really is what makes this recipe different from any other cracker, other than using only clean ingredients and no seed oils, for example. When I make cheese crackers versus plain crackers, I do add maybe a little extra 1/4 cup of water to give a slightly moister dough. The cheese does kind of harden up the dough a little bit, so I like to have the dough kind of moist. But we'll play with that later on, as you'll see. We're going to let that sit overnight. This is the dough the next day. It's nice and risen and fermented. We're going to add 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, a teaspoon of sea salt, a tablespoon of turmeric for coloring, and again another tablespoon of paprika additionally for coloring. You're going to get that nice Cheez-It color, which really helps the visual appeal for your kiddos. We're going to mix that up. This dough, as you can see, is a little bit wet, so we're going to go in with some flour here. This is what I was mentioning before. You kind of have to play with it and eyeball it, because depending on the humidity level in your house and what the temperature is outside, your dough may behave differently. So just play with the flour a tablespoon or two at a time. And we're going in here with 8 ounces of freshly shredded Gouda cheese. Now, I highly recommend get some aged Gouda. The Trader Joe's brand of the 1000-day Gouda or something is an excellent variety. I went in with a little extra flour here just to pull that dough together, as you can see. But we're just going to throw the dough hook in the mixer and kind of wait until it's pulling off the sides, which right there, it was perfect. Just that nice consistency, almost like pie dough. We're going with the KitchenAid pasta rolling attachment. You can always use the manual roller. I probably wouldn't use it myself because that'd be a lot of work, but I highly recommend that you get an electric pasta rolling machine. Do about a tennis ball size piece of dough, and I'm going to flour it and run it through the machine right on setting 4. I don't even play around with going setting 1, 2, 3 like you would with pasta. This dough really, after going through a few times, is going to smooth out and become the perfect consistency. And we're not stressing here. We're just nice and easy. This is a recipe I make all the time. You don't want to, be tinkering with too many settings and too many steps. So as make it easy as possible is what I always say. If the final product is delicious, then you won. So what we're doing, we're kind of rolling this through. The first few times the dough might be kind of wet. As you see, it kind of falls down. It falls apart a little bit there. We're just going to add a little bit of flour each time and pass it through until we get a nice uniform rectangular shape. And we're going to transfer it to our sheet pan. Depending on the size of sheet pan you have, this is a full-size sheet pan that makes it so much easier to make these crackers because I can do large batches. If you're doing a gallon size, full bag size of crackers, then it really helps to have a larger pan. So I highly recommend you get one. I'll put the link in the description. And we're going with just a thin layer of melted butter. This is Kerrygold grass-fed butter, nothing special. It's not salted butter, it's definitely unsalted. And we're gonna add our own high-quality sea salt, just a light layer again. We're not gonna overdo it. The Gouda cheese does have some amount of salt in it itself. So then we're not adding any more butter here. We're just spreading the salt, distributing it evenly, because that sea salt I use is pretty kind of wet and it doesn't spread out by itself too well. Then we're going to go in with a dough docker and punch some holes in there to prevent bubbles from forming, and use a pizza cutter to cut these up in any shapes you like. I've even used the little goldfish slicers where you kind of poke goldfish shapes into it, but that's just too much work for everyday purposes. And we're going to go in the oven for 9.5 minutes at 400 degrees. I always start checking right at about 9 minutes to see how brown it is, but you can see how on the end right there is nice and brown. any more brown than that and it's going to start to burn. So we're going to go in with the next batch here. The other crackers can be cooling while we're doing the next batch. We just flour up that ball. Like you saw, that was about a tennis ball size. If you have a smaller sheet pan, like I said, you want to use maybe a smaller dough ball and do some more batches. If you're going to make this regularly, then please invest in all the tools that you see here because it will change your life. It'll make it so much easier. And again, we're just going for that nice uniform rectangular shape. We're going to keep, if it's too wet, we're going to keep flouring a little bit. Of course, using the Jovial einkorn flour. The Jovial brand einkorn flour can be found in most grocery stores these days, but if you can't find it, then I definitely recommend checking out their website and ordering in bulk, as they sell it in 10-pound bags, which is a huge savings. There we are, a couple more sheets. Nice thin layer of butter again. Not trying to overdo it with this because we don't want to oversaturate the dough. And we're going to go in with the salt, spread the salt around. Then our little dough docker tool. Of course, the link will be in the description for one of those. They're on Amazon, about $8 or so. And are just going through with the pizza cutter again. Again, as I said, 400 degrees, 9.5 minutes. You're welcome to rotate halfway through. It does give a little bit more of an even cook, but I don't always do it, so it's up to you. When you make these every other week or something on a regular basis, then you don't always do every single step exactly the same, but it's up to you. Also depends on how your oven cooks. All right, sometimes the dough will get stuck a little bit, or little differences will happen. It's no big deal. You just keep rolling because it's casual. We got a little too brown on the one side there, but those little brown ones don't taste too bad as long as they don't burn. So here is it's the last batch, and the dough is always a little too much or a little too little. So I trimmed the dough on one end there, which makes it easier. And then I'm going to take the last little bit and just throw it in the side there. Just tuck it in, and it's going to take a little bit longer to bake because it's covering more surface area and it's closer together. But we find a way to make it work. We use the knife to cut it all the way to the edge because the pizza cutter wouldn't get there. But just little tricks like that will help you save some time, which is critical when you're doing this all the time. And there we have our final product. It's so beautiful, so delicious, so crunchy, so cheesy. You have not had crackers like this, I'm telling you. You absolutely have to make these. And as always, check out my website for more information and more videos like this.